Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 122 of LunarCrush Live. I am flying solo tonight, but I've got some great questions that Eric lined up for me here. Thank you, Eric, for all the hard work this week. Today, I'll be joined by Calvin Chu, core builder at Impossible Finance. He's waiting backstage. We'll be discussing, his background. We'll learn a little bit about him, what Impossible Finance is. Next week, as a reminder, we've got Robert Bryan from Karate Combat joining us, first professional sports league to launch a DAO. So pretty interesting. That'll be fun. Looks like fans and athletes can control every facet of the league, they said. The following week, we're going to have Gammy from Gunar's DAO on the show. They're going to be diving into what is Gunar's DAO and how they support extreme athletes. So that'll be pretty fun. I'm sure Ian and Eric want to join me on that one. We'll see if John comes up too. Also, make sure you get that subscribe button going. We're going to slam that subscribe button tonight. And a disclaimer, as always, we do not take payment for our live stream or for LunarCrush Live. We bring on amazing projects and people who have dedicated their careers to crypto and making an impact on Web3 and beyond. As always, our core mission at LunarCrush is to create transparency with investing. With that, I'm going to let the intro here roll, and we'll bring Calvin up. Let's do it. Calvin, my man, how are you doing tonight?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's night for me, but I think it's day for you.
Yeah, I get to say GM to all of you guys, so appreciate everybody for having me today. I think Joe and everybody, we've always seen a lot of cool stuff at LunarCrush, and your intro actually already got me kind of excited about some of the next episodes. I'm a big sports fan, so anytime I see people starting to put together some of their other passions and slam it into crypto, that's something that I'm really excited to see, because it means that we've come so far from kind of where we started, at least for, I think, a lot of us in our journeys to crypto. Maybe we found out about it in a lot of different ways, but to finally see people mesh their passions with some of their passion to learn about what's happening in the crypto space is, I think, a really, really awesome thing happening.
Love that. Great preamble. And maybe we can dive just like straight into that, like talking about, mashing your passion with crypto. And, I think a couple of years ago it was, XYZ for crypto, XYZ for DeFi, for NFTs. And are we finally going to hit an inflection point here where it's just people building brands and building cool companies or projects? And crypto or Web3 is just the best way to facilitate that?
I won't want to say best. I think I don't like to use absolutes, but I do think it's one of the most easily available. So, what time zone are you guys in? I assume
We're in California,
Eastern.
so Pacific
Oh,
time in
okay,
the US.
Pacific time.
Yeah.
Okay, so 15-hour time difference between you and me.
Right.
And we've never met, never seen each other in person, and we're talking today, right? So there is something, I think, a bit magical about how crypto and blockchain is able to get communities to be connected kind of worldwide, whether it's some of the NFTs that you collect or some of the tokens that you hold. You're kind of a part of a religion in some way, and it's something that does transcend a lot of the boundaries and physical limitations that we see, of obviously being nearby each other, that with the ability to have economic systems where whether you're a token holder in one country or another, you're still, let's say, 1/10,000th of the supply for some profile picture. In some way, it creates this type of very clear, everybody's participating in the same thing mentality. And I think that's one of crypto's most interesting beauties. That transparency can also allow people to feel and see the membership and ownership that they have of any of these different networks.
Do you own any NFTs?
I do. Maybe too many for my own personal benefit.
I guess it's probably a dumb question. What's your favorite collection that you're holding right now, if you could say so?
Ooh, this is always
Or what collection are you like kind of hyped on in the last week or so? How's that? Or a couple weeks?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'll answer this with maybe four things that are interesting. So,
Okay.
obviously, my profile picture on Twitter that probably people are familiar with is a crypto funk, because they're actually crypto punks that are facing left. Probably one of the first or most notable collections that got banned by OpenSea, and I think this would be something that a lot of people in different NFT communities were talking about. You know, the kind of potential for centralization on large players if they decide to block certain assets from being tradable. So that's obviously the one that I think a lot of people have seen me associated with. The most interesting thing that happened for me in the last month of NFTs is during Token 2049 in Singapore. I was actually able to go to a Pudgy Penguin meetup, and I think that was actually really cool. Just seeing a lot of the other builders. There's some link, maybe I'll share it for the stream notes later. Is Peng Pao Mafia. Someone created this like big board of all the folks in Pudgy Penguins community and what are they doing in crypto. And there's like, I don't know, 100 something projects in this like big poster. So I'll find it and I'll share it over in a bit. Um, and then I would say in terms of interesting things that I've never seen before, thought before, was looking at a collection called Deep Objects. Maybe you guys have seen a lot of the kind of AI, like type in a word or two
Yeah, generative
from
art.
stable,
I've
stable
gone kind
diffusion
of
and
crazy
stuff.
on it in the last couple weeks.
So actually, I think there's one team that's taking this to a bit of a logical extreme and is trying to actually design fashion or streetwear using this, where maybe AI creates like the a million possibilities, and then it allows communities to curate after the million possibilities. So if maybe in some way it feels like we're human captchas again, trying to select like four things and we say which one is the best, but
Yeah.
for us that have, I think, maybe seen some of this generative art, I think there's some really interesting things to balance the mixture of tech and people. And I think that's one thing that crypto communities are very interesting to do, because that's what all of our token economies, they still have to balance. You know, sometimes people kind of maybe bash different projects for just being a governance token, and we don't really know what you really govern. Um, but obviously, when used right, I think some of these tokens actually do empower a lot of people to have say in the direction of things. And I think that being able to help kind of impact how a you know, design of something is definitely one of the things that maybe isn't so important to govern in a DeFi protocol, but it's definitely very interesting to govern if you're, you know, creating shoes with a certain physical brand.
Just real quick, so before I forget, how many Pudgy Penguins fans or holders showed up at Token 249 at that meetup? Like, how many people were IRL right there that were holders? Do you know?
Ooh, I was there for most of the event. I think probably 100 plus.
It's pretty impressive.
Uh, it was actually pretty cool. They rented out a movie theater, and then yeah, I had like popcorn and everything, to kind of just get everyone together. Probably one of the coolest event venues. I have to give them a hat tip for thinking of renting out a movie theater. But yeah, it was just really good vibes. There were a lot of people that we kind of met in person for the real life for the first time. We're like, oh, you're that guy, kind of thing. So I think it's always kind of fun to have a bit of that.
Yeah, I think that's refreshing in this space just because we do spend so much time like this and meeting people and realizing how real everything is. I think it's sometimes it feels a little odd, if you're at home working all the time, especially during COVID. But I think, with crypto, it was always kind of needed to be like that. Like it needed to be, you needed to optimize your business to be remote first, and you needed to create culture that way because you couldn't have this kind of one foot in, one foot out. A lot of companies that I guess were started like pre-COVID, like, but a long time ago versus companies that were starting around COVID or post-COVID. It's, how can you have someone coming in 2 days, not in 2 days, out 3 days, in one day, out? It's just, there's no flow. And I've been saying this for a while now. It's like, I haven't seen the model yet. And I know people do offsites and they all get together, which I think is really important, but I haven't seen like the ebb and flow model that I think really works for anyone yet. I don't know if you guys are kind of fully remote over there, decentralized, like how that works and how it's been being all remote.
Yeah, so this is a great segue, I think, to share a bit more on Impossible.
Yeah.
We're a team of about 30 teammates, actually holding 15 passports or nationalities. So our team is very, quite literally decentralized. Like we're averaging what two people per country. So yeah, we definitely don't really have the ability to set up an office or anything in a lot of different places. But we've been actually, I would say, preaching our own medicine or really using our own medicine, right? So we do actually use a couple metaverses as well to sometimes just do different like kind of stand-ups or meetings just to get people feeling a bit like they're a bit more together. Of course, we can't replicate the real thing, but one of the most valuable things I would say is the geographic diversity also helps us get a good pulse on the market for as many of the different countries that we have users from. I think Impossible has seen users from more than 70 something countries. So it is something that I think kind of matches to the mission of what we want to do. So I think you also asked a bit about kind of we'll dive a bit deeper into, I guess, the history and kind of how I got into crypto. Um, but one of the things I did wish when I first got into crypto was that I knew kind of how to do more research or find other folks that were doing a bit more research before making investments, because I did lose quite a lot of money myself as a trader in the 2018 dip from BTC going 20K down to what, 4? And that was something that I felt like I didn't really have the same level of guidance or community or folks that I have today to be able to look at investments from as deep of an angle as I would like, and that's something that Impossible has always set out to do. That we want to be a platform that connects both the users and the project teams, to be able to give users an opportunity to invest in high quality projects at the valuations that maybe you see funds or other players in the space get to invest at. And that's something that obviously we carried over when we spent time at Binance, and now we want to carry that over to Impossible. So we've done, I think, about 14 launches thus far over the last about 1 year and 2 months or so. So we're almost exactly one a month. We never wanted to outpace ourselves and not do any quality control, because that's exactly what we felt some of the space was lacking when we started making investments ourselves. So yeah, hopefully the lot to unpack there, but happy to elaborate more on anything that
Yeah.
you
So
would
I would
love to hear
say,
more on.
what do you consider yourself like first and foremost, like a launch pad, an accelerator, or is it more kind of like, kind of feel like AngelList feel a little bit where it's, anyone can kind of get involved? Or, I mean, are you doing both? Are you helping the projects grow after they come in, they're part of kind of the launch pad? Or are you saying, hey, we're just gonna, we're gonna kind of democratize the opportunity for people to get and be a part of, some of these projects that are launching, because we've kind of gated, some of those, and we've done the research and we've learned about them. We know they're quality projects. And so we're bringing retail or bringing other people in.
100%. So, excuse me. I think so. Yeah, we've looked at thousands of decks over the last year. So, I guess 14 going live is like what, 1.4% out of 1,000. So we do feel that we are bringing a lot of the gating to it. Interesting that you mentioned AngelList, because I guess maybe my kind of full circle journey was that I was a college student working on some startups myself and thinking about actually some charity stuff bordering the two sides of finance and charity, trying to do impact investment and stuff like that. And one of the earliest players in this was actually Republic, which is also in the AngelList kind of family. And so
Yep.
I actually at one point I think slightly jammed the AngelList API because I was trying to just basically brute force myself to learn about fintech. And so I read on the jobs page, all these projects would give the one sentence startup line about what they do. And I manually clicked through something like 12 or 14,000 or something like that of these one sentence startup pitches, because I think the way I learn is I feel maybe I'm a bit of an AI model myself, but you give me enough data points, I'll finally figure out something. I'm pretty confident in myself in that. And that's kind of the way that I got deeper into this fintech world. I just literally read every single thing I could understand about all the different models that existed out there. One thing led to another, and I ended up actually interning and becoming one of the earlier employees or contributors to Republic. This was pre-Republic coming into crypto and before CoinList spinning out to focus on crypto as well.
Wow.
I got to really see some really interesting kind of deals that happened there, and got to learn from them in terms of doing some of the research and due diligence, and how they operated operationally to try and get these investments opened up to the masses. So that was definitely an invaluable experience. But I was still a little bit early, and at that time, crypto hadn't really become a cornerstay of what they were doing yet. We had only done 5 launches or so in, I think, 2017 within crypto. So, and CoinList was still, I think, had only done maybe Filecoin at that time. And then I was actually just graduating from university at that time. So unfortunately, they didn't have plans to be able to bring me on full time. And so I was looking for as many different opportunities as I could during the finals week of college. Was just throwing my resume at all of the different platforms that I, as a user in crypto, was accustomed to using, and got lucky in that someone from Binance reached back out, because obviously I had traded and lost money on Binance, and I was like, I wrote my thesis on crypto exchanges. I think that exchanges can do better in terms of quality controlling listings to be able to balance trading volume, which is obviously what they make money on, and a user experience, which depends heavily on having a high level of quality on the assets that are tradable on said platforms. One thing led to another, and 2 weeks after graduation, I was on a flight to Asia to join Binance and become a part of the research team. So I spent about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years at Binance, helping build up some of the listing framework, contributing to a lot of the due diligence for projects on the Binance Launchpad. Obviously, I think a lot of the listeners have seen things like Matic, Axie Infinity, so on and so forth. And so was very fortunate to be able to see a lot of these projects kind of grow. And I would say, to answer your question about a bit of the strategy of being not just a launch pad, what people don't realize behind the scenes was that we spend a lot of time working with these project teams before they hit kind of the stage. Just like I was in the back room of StreamYard here before going live. There's a lot of prep that goes behind the scenes before I even get here to see the stream, 6 minutes before we go live. There's, I think, probably 4 or 5 of the first 6 or 7 launch pads we spoke with for more than a year. We were doing due diligence, and at one point, I think the Matic due diligence doc became 50 some pages of Google Doc notes. That's one of the things that also garnered the most respect from the project teams, because when we did meet IRL eventually, or to take a step back, we weren't allowed as research to actually meet the teams. So we did all of our research anonymously. That was also to help make sure that we had less biases with the team, less contact or ways for them to, sway our vote. But that we would have to conduct all this research via Google Docs. So we got very good, as I would call anon-researchers, hiding in your Discord or Telegram, trying to grab as much information from your community and your ecosystem, your GitHub, whatever it might be, to assemble that all into a due diligence report. So that's something that I would say that we were able to do at a really high quality, but then also give some of the feedback when we weren't satisfied with different aspects of the project, to be able to help them get to the point where they were ready to hit showtime. So that's definitely something that in kind of looking back at all of it, was something that I don't think users realize how much sweat we put into projects before they went live on the Binance Launchpad. And so today, one of the things that we pride ourselves at Impossible is that we do want to be more than just a platform that offers these investment opportunities, but rather somebody that's kind of there every step of the way. We work with projects at any stage and kind of accelerate them along their progress. And then once they hit our listing thresholds, for us to be able to be comfortable to list them, then we offer them to our users. So that's also, I think, unfortunately, some part of why out of that 1,000 funnel, I think some people would say we're a bit inefficient in only getting 14 projects out of this 1,000 plus projects that we've looked at decks at. But for us, I think we're still at a stage where we rather do things that don't scale and make sure that we keep the quality and the hands-onness that we like to see in working with projects. And that by setting that tone or standard for the users, they know that we're not just going to shove everything up on this platform. We really want to be doing that quality control, but beyond that quality control, actually influence and help those projects actually get to the point where we can say maybe when we first saw this deck or when we first saw this pitch or this product, it wasn't there yet. But after us helping A, B, and C, boom, it's ready to go. And that's something that we want to actively shift the outcomes of these projects rather than just sit back and relax and say, hey, what comes onto our platform just gets regurgitated to users.
I think that number is actually pretty fair when you think about, even the way that venture works, right? Like when you think about, hey, we're going to invest in, 1 out of 500 projects, and that 1 out of 500, is the unicorn, right? And then like maybe 8 of them, you double your money, and then another 8, like you get your money back, and then for the rest of them, they don't make it, right? By like doing the quantity of research that you're doing, you're just kind of whittling down that, the 80 or 90 or whatnot that aren't going to make it, right? You're just kind of whittling that down a little bit more, and you're offsetting that with, probably a gargantuan amount of research, which I think is important. And so what kind of, so you've got these 500-page Google Docs on things like Matic, and now you're doing that with Impossible. Where's kind of the thread across all of this where you're saying, hey, if the project, like what gets you excited when you start to do diligence and you see like, you've probably got like this checklist, right? If like a 5, maybe 10 things that these are the need to have to even move on to, earn your way to do more diligence, right? So do you have a list like that, or 5 to 10? Can you talk about something like that? Or maybe are there 5 things that you really truly look for? And then what are those, what's probably like the most important out of those 5?
Yeah, so yeah, put me on the spot here.
Mhm.
So I do want to preface that this is also one of the things I'm really proud of at Impossible, that actually roughly a quarter of our team is split out in the 4 kind of major um, like teams. So marketing, research, technology, and operations. I think we're almost exactly a quarter each. And I think that's a little bit different of a makeup with most teams, because I don't think most teams have 25% of their headcount be devoted to research. So that's kind of the only way we're able to output, the level of research that we would like. We actually have been creating also data dashboards. So I think we did one on pudgy penguins even, and other people, other collections as well. So I think we are pretty wide in our scope in what we look at. So it's not any specific sector. And so we do have some different criteria, different checklists, depending on what sectors you might be in. So we kind of rate, for example, GameFi projects slightly different, because for games, we think that if the game is not fun, it doesn't matter, I guess, whether or not on the graphics level, is it AAA or if it's super lo-fi, but if it's fun, because ultimately, I don't think you've ever played a game that you didn't like to play. So I don't think we should be trying to force economic models on games that people don't like to play. So in that kind of type of case, we might heavily weight the product or other pieces that play into the game. Uh, More heavily inside the rating for, say, a game. Whereas maybe for, let's say, a DeFi derivatives platform or something like that, we might be looking at it from heavily a finance background. Given our experience at our own, path in centralized exchanges, I think we are also realists when we look at a lot of DeFi things to see what are the things that can really scale to capture CeFi level audiences and CeFi level liquidity. And that's something that we might look very heavily into on the DeFi side. So I think it's a bit of balance. Maybe on the infrastructure side, we care a lot about developer. For lack of better word, I'll just equate it something similar to a net promoter score. If it's an infrastructure and developers don't like to use it, who's going to use this infrastructure, right? The audiences of different products that we see within crypto are all different. And for us, a lot of what we think about is who are the next integrators of this thing, right? Or integrators, right? Whatever the meme is with the OR, right? And I think that a lot of what we want to see is if developers are using this thing, we think that there's a new type of business model that is possible within crypto that's maybe not as prominent in others, is something of B to D, business to developer. And I guess maybe you've seen different models that are like B to C to B or other types of like derivatives of this. I think you can also see small like subsets of B to D that would be B to D to C or B to D to B, so on and so forth. But that one of the models that we are very keen to see in crypto is when a protocol is doing stuff that is solving those developer pain points, because then the developers go out to go and solve whatever problems they want to solve using that tool as well. And so I would say it's more like maybe this isn't the right analogy, but it's 10 a.m., so forgive me. I would say part of it is trying to build an app store, not just an app. If we are thinking about scaling things, and as at the beginning you mentioned about, can crypto be connecting people around the world and doing things that's maybe more efficient or different than what other setups in other worlds have? For us, I do think that these abilities to have, let's say all of these different developers. Let's say, as an example, Uniswap uses the graph on the front end. And so Uniswap being a team based I would say, heavily based in the US. So sorry if I'm causing any regulatory flack here. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus here. But that, obviously talent to bring on, let's say, full stack engineers within Western world is not super cheap. And so if this technology of the graph makes it easier for them to grab this on-chain data to be able to display all of the prices that you see on the website, that's fundamentally something that's very efficient. And so that's the type of stuff that we would love to kind of find in the future and help give those opportunities to invest to our users. The graph was actually one where I was lucky enough to use at hackathons myself as a developer, and that by being able to see how much time it saved firsthand, super early back when I think it was still like Uniswap V1 was using it back then. That it was something that let us do a lot of early due diligence back at Binance to see these projects kind of grow. And that now, after seeing so much of our own networking connections across players within the space, as new, let's say, chains are being launched or new ecosystems are being deployed, we're able to make introductions for teams like the Graph to new chains and new ecosystems so that they can be ecosystem players on the new chains. So that's something that we're very excited to hopefully see more of at Impossible. And I don't think it's going to be a kind of only a checklist that is stale. As you mentioned, I think stuff is happening within crypto all the time. And so if we're only using these specific criteria or checklists to move on to the next level, I think we're always going to be missing, the new criteria or the new needs that people at these project teams need to have in order to get to the point where we're getting and filtering most accurately.
Thank you. And yeah, I think with the graph, people don't realize how pivotal that is to the infrastructure of what's going on. We had Tegan on a while ago, probably last year, talking about it. It's good stuff. So you said something interesting in there where you talked a little bit about, obviously product, like you're looking at product, right? You're looking at, will people use this, whether it's a game, whether it's a developer looking at some sort of infrastructure that they're trying to create or build. But then you did mention, look, like you're trying to kind of gate for something that would like be able to achieve kind of like centralized exchange or DEX liquidity at mass or volume. It's like how specifically are you analyzing whether or not you believe something has the ability to gain that? Because I think there's something really interesting in there of what you're kind of saying is we're figuring out whether or not this has mass market appeal, from a trading standpoint, along with whether or not the product is also working and the product is, going to be used by people. So how do you look at that actual like deep liquidity side of what you were saying?
Yeah, so I think it's twofold. And I do want to clarify. I meant I meant more on the TVL side rather than maybe the token trading liquidity. But I would say in terms of the uh, protocols, one of the things that we thought a lot about at Binance was looking at relative adoption. Um, Everything we do at research doesn't start from looking at just the project in silo, but rather first surveilling the space and feeling like we can be quizzed on anything in the top 1,000 of CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, and you can know that we have the explanation in one sentence for what it is. And having that as a baseline allows us to then go and say, hey, what are these different things doing differently from what's already out there in the space? And can they differentiate themselves as well as follow or learn from certain pieces of other things that have worked in crypto and combine those for something that might be able to leapfrog what we see currently today in the space. So I think a great example of how we thought about a bit of this previously back at Binance for one of our launch pads was Band Protocol, which is a multi-chain oracle. I think mainly today it has a lot of Cosmos-based things because it also has its own chain, which is the Cosmos-based chain. Um, and the math went something relatively like this. Chainlink at that time was obviously had a great community and very, very fervent community, right? The Link Marines
Yep.
and all the different integrations and partnerships that they had. They're sitting at about a $1 billion fully diluted market cap. And for us at Binance, yes, it was definitely one of the larger trading assets, right? But the interesting thing that we saw was that at that time, Chainlink was still basically only on Ethereum. And we saw a trend or a catalyst of there are a lot of new chains coming up and that their tech was fundamental. And so we said, would Chainlink be able to just exist on 100 chains with no scaling issues? Um, we thought that would be also hard for Chainlink, right? As great as a team they may be, because different communities obviously like to champion something that's kind of homegrown to their own ecosystems as well. And so we thought, hey, maybe we should start looking for other things in the Oracle sector because we do see the growth of DeFi at that time. I think maybe DeFi market cap was something along the lines of like 500, 600 mil USD. It hadn't even hit 1 bill of total assets in DeFi. And so we were saying that, okay, if there's more dApps, more lending protocols, and more chains on which these lending protocols might exist, there are going to be more products that need oracles. So overcame Band when we saw a DAC and was, reviewing the project, and they're sitting at a $10 million fully diluted valuation for us to invest. And so basically we thought about this in a probability sense. In terms of expected value, if we see that Chainlink is 100x the valuation of a new performer in this space, do we think that the new performer only has a 1% chance to carve out an equal market opportunity? And for us, we said, if we're bullish on seeing all these different chains proliferate and seeing more of this DeFi TVL increase, there would be factors that we see as value that if we think about this in terms of alpha versus beta, everyone talks about trying to find alpha, but also I think we want to strategically find spots where we think beta is growing, right? So we thought in 2019 that DeFi would grow, number of chains would grow, and then that would increase the total addressable market that oracles might have inside products that developers would want to integrate into their future protocols, right? And so for us, we said, okay, then maybe bands might not have nearly as large of a community as Chainlink. Maybe it's literally 1,000 to 1, right? So on that aspect, Chainlink definitely is going to be able to be a big player within this Oracle space, but that this project team, if on the product side, they can actually support oracles that are able to provide something that is really, really valuable. And for example, Cosmos, I think, has roughly 1 second block times, and obviously Ethereum I think now is at like 13 or 12-ish after the merge, that we're able to see exactly how, if I was, say, betting on a sports game and wanted to use a sports DApp of some prediction market, and I'm betting live inside the game, and then maybe a touchdown is scored by a team, and then I'm waiting for Ethereum 12-second block times, my Oracle, even if it's the best technology, I'm limited by the chain that I'm on, so that maybe my 12-second data is already stale for me to be able to make a live bet inside this game, right? So that I can see a developer thinking that I can go build a live betting app that allows for intra-game betting on, say, another chain like Cosmos, which I can maybe not provide that experience on Ethereum. And so those would be business models that developers could go and take and then demand an Oracle that we can see potentially capturing some user usage. So today, if you actually look at the market cap relative valuations between Band and Chainlink, I actually haven't done this in a while, but shout out to CoinGecko for always having some really good sector tags, which we look quite a bit into. Um, Basically, today, Band Protocol is sitting at 100 mil FDV, so it's sitting at about a 10x of what the investment or valuation was back then for the users. Chainlink is sitting at 6.6 billion, so it is sitting at a 66x FDV value versus Band. So that's I think a really interesting takeaway, because that ending up the ratio is still basically 1.66% is what Band sits at today relative to Chainlink. So it did outperform our relative bets on it being able to keep up with Chainlink, but more importantly, the entire DeFi space grew. And so the way that we make a lot of our investments, or the a way that we want to bring project teams to our users, is twofold. Not just how much can this project team have a viable play within that sector with their technology, their team, their marketing, whatever the expertises may be, but also, does this give us another seat at the table? Maybe a lot of the audience likes to play poker, and I think sometimes it's like you can't win a hand if you fold it, and sometimes if access is a key problem that I think we see in the space, that for a lot of users, if you're looking to zero knowledge proofs or oracles or new game stuff, you might not know what is the best thing. But if this kind of thesis plays out, and because you didn't have the information or knowledge at your fingertips to be able to make that investment opportunity or decision, you will never be able to win a hand in this round, right? And so what we want to do is know which hands we want to be in. And sometimes, as you mentioned, venture and early stage stuff is still risky, but we do want to know that we have a shot at a straight or a flush or some big hand. And that's a lot of what our research is designed to do, to first find which hands we want to sit on. Hopefully there's already a flop. Most of what we see in terms of crypto, we already see some cards on the table. And that's some of the pattern matching that we want to have, hopefully a two pair in our hands, or something that is, closer to what we see out there on the board of everything in the top 1,000 of CoinGecko, and slowly see what things we can do to beat that hand or beat those cards that are available out there for everyone to play.
Appreciate that. And so you almost want me to go in right now. Let's do like a quiz for like top 1,000 by market cap and just like pick one. But maybe we can even do like a separate live stream where we just like try to quiz your team, which I think would be fun. But so, in a relatively like bull market, I could see kind of like relative size and everything kind of, obviously, yes, if you see something with comparable or even better technology at a smaller market cap, and ultimately, the tailwinds are behind us, you're going to have more tailwind and you're going to have potentially more upside there, obviously, depending on, what you're doing. How do you think about that in a bear market, as things are contracting and, a lot of what we're seeing, and it's not just crypto, it's not just NFTs. I mean, you look at something like Snapchat, it's off 90%. You look at something like Shopify, off 80%. Like this has happened. The macro right now is, for lack of a better term, is a cluster. And so how do you see kind of some of your strategy adjusting in the bear market, especially when you think about bringing new projects, out there and pushing them, to your audience?
Yeah, so I think this is probably the most commonly asked question for people that have a launchpad, whether or not it's their only kind of product line. I will say a lot of people are like, will you just have to shut down? Like, are there no deals anymore, kind of thing? And for us, it's almost the opposite. We would feel that the importance of investing smartly in a downturn is actually the most important because of the way math works. If something falls 50% first, and then increases 50% after, so let's say your portfolio goes from $1,000 to $500 and then increases afterwards 50% from $500, you're still sitting at net 25% loss at 750. And so if anything, the importance of the due diligence or guiding users through not making mistakes through this bear market is actually probably one of the biggest things. Of course, yes, a lot of stuff is correlated, and crypto overall is still, I would say, a high risk asset relative to the bigger world. It's just lesser participants, less listings in centralized worlds, whatever it might be. So, there's definitely the macro play here. But I think that one of the interesting things is that um, developers and builders who are in it for the long run, they kind of don't look at price. Like, I only know what ETH price was today because I needed to get some gas to send some payments. But for most of the time, you can quiz us on the top 1,000, but we actually don't know if something is like what exact rank they are in because we haven't looked at prices for a couple months. We're too busy building to try and just stare at price charts all day, right? And I think that's one of the beauties of a lot of the builders in crypto, that they don't, for a lack of better phrasing, care if the prices are up or down. They just want to do their thing. And I think that's something that's a little bit beautiful, that I don't think everyone in other industries have the luxury to be able to have folks just kind of gut through it, because maybe we're leaner teams, we're decentralized teams maybe, so we have talent that is maybe cheaper in different countries, but we're able to kind of gut through things that are bear markets that in other ecosystems you would see people downsizing or cutting as many costs as they can, trying to avoid a complete shutdown. Whereas in crypto, I think we're kind of lucky in that one of our impossible team portfolio only did one seed round, but they're a team based in Malaysia, and I think they have 5 or 6 years of runway with just one seed round. And I think that's something that's magical. Going back to what we said about connecting and uniting folks around the world, that we have folks that are building around the world nonstop. Last night, one of our teammates in Argentina was helping finish off a Google Doc. So I worked till like 2 a.m. last night. And then he just took it from there. And I woke up today and he's already got more of this doc done, right? There are efficiency gains if we do things right within crypto. And so in some ways, the deal flow, the projects, if anything, we see higher signal and less noise in bear markets to find projects. And so some of our research is maybe even easier because product teams are more than willing now to share what they're building, because they do want to get those audiences and scale those users at hopefully more efficient costs to them. And so maybe in bull market, they would actually try to chase just listing on a popular centralized exchange and just kind of throw their token out there, and they're confident that things will work. In bear markets, they're a lot more meticulous in what they go through to try and think about what are the steps I need to do to get the best launch possible. And that actually has maybe opened up us to be able to be a close partner for more of these project teams that want to do things the right way.
I agree with you. I also think though that I think like the quantity of people that like want to do it the right way when like a bull market or a bear market, it's actually like pretty similar, right? Like I think there's like the same amount of people, but what you can't sift through is the noise of the people that don't want to do it the right way. And when there's a bear market, there's just a lot less people that don't want to do it the right way. But the people that want to do it the right way are just, they're always kind of there, right? And like you said, our heads are down. We're just building, we're making things happen. We believe in the ethos of what like this democratization of opportunity is, and, getting rid of the middleman, and, moving the power of the pendulum of power more towards like the consumer. And I think there's like all of that ethos kind of just lives. And then, when things go crazy, because we are still in it, there's still a lot of speculation that's going on in the market, right? We're talking about building infrastructure, right? But we're talking about, bringing the speed of prices potentially faster to people with someone like the graph, or like lowering latency of like the app that you're building. And there's still speculation infrastructure. And so I think, it's just an interesting time right now, especially because like I came out of school in 2008, and it was the Bear Stearns Lehman moment, right? And it was like, holy shit, we're screwed forever. Like no one has a home. Everyone went from having like 10 homes to 0 homes, and like, no one's going to get a job. And I think that crypto just kind of had that moment just this year, but in this kind of amalgamated, just massive like macro thing happening. And so it's interesting to hear you talk a little bit about just how the bear market is just, it is simpler, it is easier for people that have this kind of long-term vision. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about the actual kind of dynamics of what happens when one of those 14 projects does come through, because you talked a little bit about top 1000. So are you guys taking like are these liquid tokens that are out there that you're helping launch and getting access, or these kind of private folks that are coming in and saying, hey, this is the first time? Because you're kind of talking about top 1000 and knowing what's going on. Is that more for understanding who people that are new, who they need to beat, than
Yes,
it is to
yes.
understand that specific one, right?
Correct. Yes. So we do initial decentralized offerings or IDOs. So this is the first time usually that the tokens hit the market. We are working on other products in the future that will allow for different kind of structures because we do have kind of vesting contracts and other things that could, in theory, handle secondary tokens. But we're still trying to figure out what is a market fit to solve user pain points on that front. But that I would say of those 14 sales, those are focused on the initial launches. We've also done a few different airdrop campaigns and other stuff as well. NFT whitelist even to give to our community. So we kind of want to be, I would say, your neighborhood alpha. Anytime you want to hear about something, we might have it in stock. So you just want to drop by, check the convenience store, if you will, and see if we have anything in stock for what you're looking for. So that's kind of the mindset. And I think just looping really quickly back to what you said earlier as well in terms of the Bear Stearns kind of Lehman moment. The really interesting thing about crypto, I think, is that because anyone with an internet access can come and be a part of your governance, your communities, as long as they can, download a MetaMask or Phantom Wallet or whatever on their computer, they can participate. And so one of the really cool things is that actually Impossible has a lot of incredible talent that didn't study economics or finance or pure engineering by trade, or at least like coding by trade, right? So we have like physics master students and mechanical engineering PhDs on our team, because for a lot of folks in different countries, their job opportunities, thanks to unfortunately COVID and other obviously macro things as you mentioned, they don't necessarily have the best opportunities right now in other ecosystems, and they maybe don't have the access to be able to build cool stuff in the things that they've maybe built a career in. But that if they contribute themselves, learn fast, and try and learn new skills within crypto, such as using the graph or doing analytics, whatever it might be, they can very quickly upskill themselves as just smart people to do cool stuff within crypto. And that's also, I would say, one of the other sources of new projects that sometimes we see, because we go to a lot of hackathons, organize different types of these types of builder events. That's a lot of times we see people that, thanks to some of the macro, they're actually thinking about crypto as a way for them to build something, because maybe it offers them better opportunities than we'd expect. So yes, we focus a lot on this initial or primary market. And that's where we see this as a value for the users as well. That you, as a regular user investing, say, a couple $100 into something, you probably don't have the time or the resources, even if you have the skill set, to do the due diligence necessary to find something that's super early stage. And so that's something that we do want to do to lower those barriers for the users, as well as give opportunities for builders going down non-traditional paths to also find their way within crypto.
So I'm an investor, and I find you guys, and I'm like, okay, the last couple of things these guys have kind of brought to the table is super cool. I'm gonna, when the convenience store is full, I'm gonna come stop by and I'm gonna pick something up. Like, how do they? The convenience store now has something in it. Like, how do I get involved? Like, what are the actual steps that I would take?
Yeah, so Impossible does have a token. It's the Impossible Decentralized Incubator Access, or IDIA token. And so users basically stake the token to get a pro rata share of whatever the sale is. We have some different parameters to tune it to make sure that the little guy still gets a good chance at getting more allocations. One of the things that I think unfortunately a lot of teams tried to force, and unfortunately we also did this at Binance, quite honestly because of a tech limitation, but not because it was the most economically efficient, is that a lot of teams have lottery systems to give allocation, and fundamentally we don't think that that's particularly fair, because as you guys all know, with lotteries, they're always slightly designed to try and take advantage of the little guy. There's always some house edge. And so with lotteries, you're not guaranteed any investment. So what if you do a lot of research into a project that you're very interested in and you don't actually get an allocation? You will be frustrated. That's fundamentally not a user experience that we would be particularly proud of. And when you have a lot of great research, you will know that a lot of people will line up outside of your convenience store. But the last thing you want your convenience store to do is have to only sell out for one guy, and then the other guys that all staked out, in the line, don't get to buy anything, right? And that's something that we'd much rather, even if it's not beautiful, ration out so that maybe you don't get a whole crate of chips or something, but everyone gets one bag. We're happy to try and push that. And so that's the way our math works inside our staking logic, that everyone gets a pro rata share of what they stake. So if there's like, say, a sale that's $1 million and people staked $5 million, that's a 5-to-1 ratio. So if you stake $50, you get a $10 allocation to the sale. That way it's very clear exactly what everyone gets. We feel like that's the easiest way for users to try something as well and get started. We don't want to have some minimum check size or other things like that to prevent someone from just testing the water. So even if you want to do it for like a 50 cents investment, just so you test it and understand how the product works, go for it. We don't want to stop you. And that's something that we always felt is really important in terms of the fairness and accessibility. We can say so much about democratizing investment or giving these opportunities, but if we're not making our product and our business model actually align with that, we wouldn't feel very proud of giving these opportunities to only a select few that win a lottery ticket or something like that as a process in the sale.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, that is the democratization of opportunity, is to actually give pro rata or equal to everyone that comes in. And I use this example a lot, but I think it was like the Coinbase example of someone came in and it was like a $300,000 investment from a VC that had been around forever, and obviously got an early look at the deal, because of who they were and their history. And that person netted like 2.4 billion at the IPO, and cashed out or whatnot. And it's like, that's fantastic and good for them, who someone that was already like ridiculously and filthy rich. But like, how much more interesting would it be if people could put $5 in and maybe buy a new home, or like a new car or something that is needed? And what if you could do that across thousands of people, and like a rising tide lifts all boats? It's now you have all of these people, you have economic activity versus that one person that's going to take that $2 billion. Sure, maybe they pay some taxes, probably not, they found ways around that, and then they just reallocate that potentially to other companies that potentially gets to other people. But it's almost like that's just a lot of control and a lot of trickle down economics that I don't know necessarily it works in such a global atmosphere, or at least it's not instantaneously hitting the market like it would otherwise. That I think is kind of interesting. And I listened to the All In podcast, and I remember, I forget, it was I think it was Calcana said he wishes he was an investor a lot earlier in his career, like move from a creator to like almost like an investor earlier, because of how much more lucrative it was. And so it's like, when you think about, well, what if we can all create and invest equally, right? Is that kind of the vision of some of the
Yes.
stuff that you're trying to build?
I think you hit it on the nail. I think the word that we try to use at Impossible to describe ourselves is a venture builder rather than just a launchpad, because we incubate ideas ourselves. We surveil the space as a whole so that we know what's the benchmarks out there, and then we also know what has failed as well sometimes in the space already, so that we kind of know what to do in some cases and what not to do. And there's definitely some, maybe 30-40% in the middle that we still need to figure out each time we look at a project. But that's kind of the process that we want to think about, because if we're not building a product ourselves that's serving real DeFi users, we won't actually be able to chime in the same way as a team that's actually on the front line serving users, right? So in a way, having the product of the Launchpad is something that gives us also that same builder status, because we're worried about, like multi-chain integrations and bridge hacks and audits and all these same problems that product teams have. So that because we have to go through that ourselves, we have to streamline it already, so that it's not that much more effort to make sure that we have the best auditor partners or the most efficient integration docs ready from certain partners. We can give feedback. Like I think a couple of days ago for CoinGecko, we had a chat with them and their new DEX product, Gecko Terminal, which lets you track some of these DEXs. And that we actually realized that they had some features on the product of CoinGecko, which is like the plus or minus 2% spread that you can see when you tap into the markets section of learning about the liquidity on any of these assets, that they didn't have this on the other product for the DEXs. And we were like, we actually would love to see that on the DEXs, that even for players that aren't launching token anytime soon, right? We see so much product on a day-to-day basis that we're able to, within 10 minutes of looking at a new product, spots different things that, even though it's their own product, two products that they own, even they didn't realize that this wasn't on the other one, but we have seen it, right? And that's something that I think kind of hones or sharpens our knife, if you will, as product builders ourselves, by being both operating, investing, giving these opportunities to the users. We do need to keep our own ability of operation and our own ability of building product to make sure that we're able to serve these users, and at the same time be able to hopefully give these takeaways to the project teams that we incubate and accelerate.
It's a great point. That the adage of fresh eyes don't stay fresh very long. So it's when you guys come in there and you've got the discipline, you can see things quickly. And you actually were just talking about what my next question was going to be, which is, I'm sure you've got the Venn diagrams of where the overlaps are with all the different products and where the gaps are in the market. And so, right now, where would you say the biggest gap is across like the ecosystem? Like you said, maybe you guys see something and you go build it, right? If you want it, you build an internal team, you incubate that, then you go to a launch pad. Maybe you have a tight knit, entrepreneurs and residents, whatever. It's like, I see you guys almost as like just a better venture kind of like business in a way, like you said, venture builder. But are there any gaps right now that you're seeing where you're like, man, it would be really amazing if someone went after this, because there's just a lot of alpha there and debate, and what do you think?
Yeah, so I do think that sometimes, so we actually have a 3-point scale on this one,
Okay.
because we ask this question a lot. I would say there's a lot of stuff that's super high impact, but it also will be a really hard problem to solve. So, for example, we are very bullish multi-chain, and so seeing all these new chains pop up means that there would be need for more infrastructure like bridges and other stuff that sit between all of these different chains, right? So that users can freely bring value between the two. I would think of them like highways to get interstate, right? Going from different place to place, that these are the easiest ways to do that, right? For us, as you can see with all these different bridges getting hacked, and how much technical difficulty is there to make sure that your tech is robust, we want to always stand by users, and sometimes some of these challenges are a little bit too big for us to maybe tackle as, or we could say there's better low hanging fruit, that this would be something that we would rank in a 2 on our 3 scale, where we see the impact and we see the usefulness of this, and the macro sectors may grow, but the challenge and the effort and the time to turn around and have a product or solution in the sector might be years, and by the time it's years later, maybe the entire situation in that sector has changed, and we don't want to make a decision where we feel like we know we surveil the space. But do we know exactly what will happen in 2 years? Not necessarily sure. So if we spend all this time heads down building and we churn out something in 2 years, what if the entire landscape has changed, and where we've built, a Nokia phone when everyone's got smartphones, right? Maybe it's super durable, super strong, and that's what everybody said we need to have for bridges. in 2022, but maybe in 2024 we need multifunctional, bridges, right? And we just don't know what will be the need. So what our focus is at the same time our users from our platform also give us a lot of the kind of feel for the market of what users feel is necessary within the space, and that is something that we work really heavily to try and listen to. So on the scale of 1 to 3, 3 is the projects that are super hard but have no upside. And so these are, I would say, relatively rare to see, because I think a lot of things in crypto have some upside. I think a lot of stuff falls in 2, but the things that we hope to actually influence and impact in terms of projects are the ones that are high impact but maybe low time, or lower time horizon to see something and be able to iterate faster. So I would say that right now, a few of the things that we've been, I would say, not exactly sure yet on, but I think basically anytime people go left, we kind of want to go a bit to the right. So I would say, for example, when a lot of people are building individual games, we want to try and build a game platform, or support game platforms. If people are building individual apps, get an app store, right? Kind of thing. And so we do like to be slightly positioned differently with where what's that phrase? The skate to where the puck is going, not where it
Right.
is now. That's a bit of what we like to do. And so one example of the GameFi sector, if we think about other people are playing individual single game bets, we want to play multi-game bets. So one of our teammates from our research team actually helped lead something called the 0x Olympics, which is like a crypto Olympics. So we selected some of the top games, kind of like sports, and then let a bunch of these guilds, which acted a bit like countries, to go and fight it out for gold, right? And that's something that we think is a useful thing, where maybe it's not an investable project yet, but by creating some sort of venue where other project teams and other games want to showcase their game as something that's worthy of being in a multi-sport Olympic opportunity, and something where if we want to understand the feedback from the top players and the folks that are already playing crypto games from these guilds and other ecosystems, that's something that we get the best data of what's happening in GameFi today. And so these are some of the steps that we do as a quote unquote builder that may not necessarily manifest directly in launching a project or launching a token today. But do we think that that will pay dividends for us to get on the radar of other games that are up and coming? Does that help us position ourselves with guilds and other teams that work every day on an operational level to know what are the upcoming things inside the GameFi sector? These are the types of plays that we see, maybe not necessarily building just one project directly solves a pain point or gives us more access to a certain sector, but actually building these intermediary tools or opportunities that open up our menu for that. Going back to that convenience store analogy, sometimes it's knowing what is the possible catalogs out there to order to stock up our inventory. These are some of the plays that we do ourselves to open up those lines, so that we know that if a customer at some point comes and says, hey, you don't have any chips anymore, maybe GameFi is our chips, and so this is the way for us to source those chips.
It's interesting. And, hearing you talk about time preference a little bit on those projects is interesting because, in traditional VC, it's kind of like, 7 years, right? Or, you're kind of looking for someone that's, going to build the product that like the retail doesn't even know they need yet, right? They're just kind of out there like crazy, and they're an intellectual thinker, but they're also, have the engineering chops to make that happen. And then, I think what we've seen in Web3 is just you kind of have because it's so quick, you almost have like a much faster validation of what's possible based on like this is what the market does in my mind is like they kind of you have instead of like 20 VCs saying, oh, this is going to be potentially the thing that like works in the future, you just have like 2 million or 5 million people instantaneously look at that idea and go like, oh, that's shit, or oh wow, that's interesting, now I'm going to place a bet on that, right? And like that, to me, like it's interesting to hear you say that, because it's like, okay, that's going to maybe shift this venture market in a different way that you guys are probably already way out ahead of. So I don't know. I think that's really interesting when you just talk about the time preference, because it's just different than it was even 5 years ago.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of beautiful analogies between some of the market cycles that we see in crypto and also what we see cyclically in the real world as well, right? Nothing's ever a permanent bull market, right? What Suzu said, the Super cycle or whatever. Obviously that doesn't really happen always in most places, and so.
Yeah.
From '08, as you mentioned, to now, it has been like maybe 13 years of like some kind of cycle of bull, and then things looking kind of bearish macro. Whereas in crypto, we saw 18 be when BTC kind of had a previous all-time high, and then 2021 be another one of these all-time highs, right? So we're looking at 3 to 4 year cycles so far, at least in the history of crypto, that have had complete market that you guys have all seen that chart of like the anger, despair, and like grief, capitulation, stuff like that. That chart, that entire graph in crypto just takes shorter time, right? So I like to joke that in crypto we think in block time, not seconds or uh, human time. That the clock is ticking a lot faster than we do, because maybe it's also because crypto folks are working in 24 hours a day, because in aggregate every time zone can contribute. And so if people are working 8-hour days, there's technically basically 3 shifts that happen, and there's a lot of beautiful math that's happening in all the different ways that you compare crypto to traditional world. So what did we say? 2008 to 2021 is 13 years. Crypto is maybe 3.5, 4 years ish of a cycle. That's some sort of 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio. What did I just say about the 8-hour workday that most of the world works versus these crypto ecosystems where teams are globally decentralized that are basically getting 8-hour shifts that stack? That's a 3-to-1 ratio. If you look at how long is Wall Street opening on a day-to-day basis, right? It's trading like 8:30 to 2. Is that right? 6.5 hours, if I'm doing my
Yeah.
math right.
Yeah.
Um, 6.5 hours. How much trading does a DAX or Binance trade in a day? 24 hours. 24 divided by 6.5 is another 3 point something 4-ish number. So there's a lot of these different patterns that I've noticed lately where crypto feels like it's running up tempo offense. It's sitting at a 3 or 4x speed, maybe listening to this LunarCrush thing at 2x speed afterwards if they missed it, that's the pace that we run at. And I think that there's something beautiful if we can harness some of the data and the information that we see to try and challenge ourselves to play at this up tempo kind of pace, right? We see this in all the different sports and basketball and other stuff. People moving to playing smart money, small ball, shooting threes from half court because they're getting more shots up, right? And I think that's some of the mentality that we see in crypto already starting to become that level of efficiency.
Well said. So we're at an hour here. Last question for you. So next year, July, you're trying to skate to where the puck is going, and you said you guys had 1,000 projects applying or trying to be a part of it. What kind of project do you think you're going to see applications for, like middle of next year, when potentially, hopefully we're in the middle of a massive bull market, but what kind of, for me, I love like some of the stuff that's going on with like application side chains and then horizontally scaling the industry a little bit. And I think there's a lot of interesting things there. Where do you think the market is, and what kind of applications are you going to be getting in July of next year?
Mhm. Yeah, so like we've started some preliminary research into new sectors, especially regarding privacy. As you've seen with a lot of these new chains that are coming up, like Starkware, ZK Sync, the list goes on and on. There's plenty of chains that are incorporating privacy into them. And then we've also seen different plays where maybe some people will be skeptical whether or not some of these new chains can capture users. And so for those users, something that we could see ourselves stocking into the pipeline of our convenience store would be privacy wrappers or different things that are modules that can be integrated by dApps already on the chains that you like. So maybe you're a user and you don't want to move off Ethereum or BSC or whatever you're on today. Then maybe you say, I just want to use like a shield, like incognito mode for the websites that I'm already using. I don't want to use a brand new website or a brand new browser for that matter. And so then these would be the types of plays that we see a slight permutation to the point about the pucks getting where the puck is going, that we don't know yet how much I think users will want to migrate to new chain ecosystems. That's something that will have to play out. But if we see a certain number of users just want to reside on the chains that they're already on, then this would be a type of play that we are kind of ready to stock up our shelves with within this tech and privacy sector. So I would say along those lines, a lot of the different things we would think about it more as maybe they're not necessarily brand new narratives that might pop up in the next year, but different permutations, or maybe a awkward analogy is COVID strains, like whatever these new mutations are. We'll see slight mutations. We don't think that we can ever predict something that's completely out of the blue, but we can predict some of the small mutations that are likely to happen. And so this would be the type of stuff that we would stock our pipeline with in the next year.
Beautifully said, Calvin. It's been a fun hour to hang out with you, my man. Thanks for joining us in the morning. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Calculus. So I'm sure Joe will drop this in all the different things that pop up on the screen afterwards. CALCHULUS is my handle on Twitter. Impossible's handle is ImpossibleFi, Fi. And you can feel free to message us anytime. We're always on Twitter. Would love to hop on the show another time and do a more interactive quizzing. I don't think I got to ask more about you because I'm actually really curious, because I think every time we talk to someone new, we always want to know a bit more about what's happening in their country. And so maybe some topics for the future that we'd love to dive deeper is, how do you see with obviously yesterday some of the CFTC and banter between SBF and other folks about some of the lobbying that's happening. Would love to hear more from your side as well about what you're seeing on the front lines of a lot of the America economy and how people are looking at crypto. So maybe someday we can flip it on you. Yeah, well, let's do a part 2. Really excited. Cool. Really appreciate you having me on this morning or this evening for you. So GN for you after this, and GM for all the listeners that are waking up today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. We really appreciate it. And Calvin, man, I'll chat with you backstage. Thanks, everyone.